Starting a podcast can be really difficult and expensive, or it can be really simple and done on a shoestring budget. That's what I want to talk about in today's video. I want to talk about how I was able to set up our podcast as cheaply, as quickly and easily as possible, and then talk about some of the upgrades that we've gone through over time so that you guys get a good idea, if this is something you want to do, about how to get started and what it is you're looking for from your podcast. So for those of you who do not know who I am, I'm Specky and I run a podcast with my good friend Paul Dolden, and it is called the Specky and Paul Talk Detailing Podcast, where we talk about all things car care and detailing related. We started this podcast in early 2021, and honestly it had been something I wanted to do for a very long time, but reading things and watching videos on YouTube, I learned that it actually could be really expensive and complicated. So I spent a long time researching everything I could to find out how cheaply could I set this up, how straightforward could we do it. One of the main problems we have on our podcast is that my co-host Paul is all the way down in Essex and I'm up here in the northeast of Scotland. We are very, very many hundreds of miles apart. We can't get together to record a podcast with each other all the time. So instead we have to record it remotely. So what I'm going to talk about in this video is what we did, what services we've used to talk to each other, what software we use to record our podcasts. I want to talk about what hardware we use as far as microphones and interfaces, things like that. I'll go all the way back to the very beginning of the cheap startup setup and then the upgrades that we made to the podcast, which did give us a tangible difference. So first we need to talk about needs versus wants. Needs mean you cannot live without them. You have to have these. Wants are, this would be nice, but I can live without it. I don't have to have it. You really need to be very specific about what it is you actually need, because needs are the things you're going to definitely spend the money on, and wants are going to be the things where you want to take an upgrade or you fancy something to make an improvement later on, but you don't need it right now. So what did we need for the podcast? We definitely needed microphones. That was a given. So how do you start a podcast for super cheap with the most basic microphone setup? Well, what you're listening to right now is not any other fancy microphone. This is actually a lavalier mic, one of these little things. And this is actually connected, would you believe, to my phone. This is recording my speech right now on an app. It's as simple as that. To record a podcast, all you need is something to record onto that has a microphone. I could even unplug this microphone and record into the phone's built-in microphone. So most people these days have a smartphone. That means this thing is now an audio recorder. That's all you need to set up a podcast. It could simply be you talking into your phone. That is the basic need. What is the want? What is the upgrade from there? Well, an upgrade would be a better quality microphone. Not that this is a bad quality, but you might want something a little bit different. So I'll show you a couple of the microphones that I had in the past originally, kicking about here, and then what I decided to purchase to make that sound a little bit better. So to begin with, my very first microphone was one of these. I know it looks kind of weird, spindly little thing. This was the very first microphone I purchased, and this was actually not for podcasting. This was for interviewing at a car show back in 2019. And honestly, it worked really well. Plugged into my camera, I could point at myself, I could point at other people, and it was very good. The drawback was when it came to plugging this into my computer. This is where things get a little bit complicated. This was about 20 something pounds, I want to say maybe 25 pounds. And plugged into my phone or plugged into the camera, it worked great. And that's because my phone and my camera output a little bit of power through the cable that it's connected to, the 3.5mm jack cable. and that powers this microphone. It makes it sound better. When I plugged this into my computer, into the microphone port, it sounded like hot garbage. There's no way to get around that. It sounded rubbish. And that's because if you're plugging this directly into a PC, most sound cards within a PC or a laptop don't have that power output ability. It's only dedicated sound cards which have a little bit of power. You can buy a little USB sound card that will do that, will provide power, and will certainly help the microphone sound better. But I didn't have one of those, and I didn't want to go spending any money. So I had to live with the fact that this didn't sound good, and then go into software on the computer and take away all the hiss, the noise, all the bad sounds, and try and make it sound better myself. So it is entirely possible that you can take a bad microphone with a bit of tweaking within the software and make that recording at least sound a little bit better. So the next thing was software. What am I going to use on the computer to record the podcast and edit that sound? Well, there are many paid options, but if you already have a Mac of some sort, an Apple computer, you've probably got GarageBand already installed. That is a free piece of software that will allow you to record podcasts and edit them. For Windows, like I'm using, I downloaded a free piece of software called Audacity, and it is fantastic for being completely free. Not just freeware or shareware, or it's a little bit free for a certain period of time. No free trials. It's free forever, and it is really solid at allowing me to record the audio, to import audio from other sources, to put them together, to match them up, to chop out bits, to tweak the sound quality, noise reductions, limiters, compressors, all different filters that you can do. It's not difficult to use. It takes a little bit of learning, but there's loads of guides on the internet and on YouTube to help you get the best out of your sound quality. It was one of the best moves I made. As far as being able to talk remotely with my friend Paul, well, there are different ways you can go about this. One is simply to get on your phone and make a phone call. You can phone each other. While you are doing that, you're also recording your own microphone to your computer. So that's what we do at the moment. I speak to Paul online, and he records his microphone onto his computer with Audacity. I record my audio onto my computer with Audacity. He will then send me his file, his saved recording over the internet. I download it and put both of them into Audacity, and then I can line them up to make sure that they match exactly with each other, so the conversation flows when I stop talking and he picks up. Very clever. I can tweak all the audio, and I remember this is a free piece of software. It is undeniable at just how good that piece of software is. So that is how we do it. Now, we have made certain upgrades over time. Originally, we talked on WhatsApp or Zoom, things like that. But there are other ways of going about it which can help you do more. So now I want to talk about the upgrades that we've gone through to get us to where we are now. So the first real upgrade I made to the podcast was because I wanted my sound to be better without having to go through editing and changing and tweaking and trying to make the cheap microphones sound better. So for roughly the same price, I bought a new microphone. This is it. This was £25 at the time that I bought it. This is an Amazon Basics USB microphone. Very simple and straightforward. It comes with a little tripod stand to put it down on your desk. Well, I didn't want my one on a desk, so I bought one of these flexible, movable arms that allowed me to attach the microphone onto the end of it. That helped it to bring it closer to my mouth and place it exactly where I wanted, rather than being on a desk. It's a very simple and straightforward microphone, but it's one of the best sounding microphones for the money. Now, I didn't find this out by myself. I have to give a shout out to a YouTube channel called Podcastage. Bandrew over at the Podcastage channel did an amazing job at going through so many different microphones. He's still doing it now, telling you what's good and what's bad about microphones and where they work, where they fall short. Really fantastic, and it really helped me to decide that this is the one I was going to spend my money on. It's not a lot of money, £25, but this gave me a big advantage. Like I said before, with the cheap microphone, I wasn't getting any power to it, which meant that I had to run the gain a little higher. That made it more noisy and it wasn't ideal. It didn't sound good and I'd have to tweak it more. This being a USB powered microphone means that it draws power from the computer. So that USB cable doesn't just allow the sound to go back, but allows power to come in here to power the capsule to listen better. The sound quality step up with this microphone alone was a big deal. Really, I cannot stress just how much of a difference it made. It also meant that because I didn't have to edit it so much, I could spend more time on getting the podcast right for the pacing of the channel and how the chats went, and making sure that there were no big gaps, things like that in the editing. So this helped, but it wasn't perfect. This mic is very susceptible to plosives. Plosives are the puffs of air when you use the letter P and B in certain words. So puffs, when you say puff, boom, power, these puffs of air coming out of your mouth. This little mesh is supposed to mitigate some of that, but it doesn't do a good enough job. So another upgrade at the time was to get a pop filter. That's exactly what this is. It's got a little arm here with a flexible leg, and you attach this to the arm of your mount, and this will be placed in front of the microphone like that. And what it will do is allow sound to go through, but stop those plosives as much as possible. So you'll still sound really good, but those plosives won't hit the mic and you won't hear quite so much of those popping noises when you're talking. So that was a pretty good upgrade. Now, my friend Paul, on the other hand, he always likes to one-up me. So when I say I'm going to buy a £25 microphone, I really think it's a good idea, you should get one too. He bought a £50 microphone on Amazon, and it's a really good one with a stand, and it has its own pop filter as well. And it sounds great, to be perfectly honest. But I felt that I wanted to take it a little bit further again, so I decided to go for my next upgrade. This is where I wanted to go for a dynamic microphone over a condenser. That little USB microphone is a condenser, so is the little stick mic. They sound good, but they strain. They take that power and they try to listen to everything going on around you. And that means if you live in a house with family and you have the kids running around in another room playing, you're going to hear them. It's going to be really difficult to stop outside noise from coming into that microphone because it really tries to pick everything up. A dynamic microphone, on the other hand, is a different kettle of fish. It only wants to listen to things very closely to the capsule of the microphone. That was my next upgrade, this microphone here. So this is the Samson Q2U microphone. It is a dynamic microphone with XLR and USB connectors on the bottom. That allows me to plug it in with an included USB cable, just like with the Amazon Basics microphone, but it allows me to plug it into any computer and it will recognize as a Windows recognized microphone. I can just start recording onto any computer I want to. It also has a headphone socket on the bottom, so I get zero latency feedback, so I can hear my microphone. I can hear exactly what's going on. I also get computer sound coming through there, so it's very clever. But it also has the XLR connector on the bottom, which means I can connect this to audio interfaces for situations where I have that possibility. Perhaps I'm doing something on stage, I can take this mic with me. Or if I want to get a better quality of audio interface, I can plug in with that. And the sound quality is just ever so slightly better through XLR than USB, but it is barely noticeable, but it's really nice to have that flexibility. It has the wind muff on the top, and to be honest, this does such a good job that I don't need a pop filter. You won't see one here on my microphone arm. That's what the microphone looks like as standard, and it's really good like that, but the included wind muff makes a fantastic difference, and it doesn't pick up really any of the plosives when I'm talking. It really is absolutely fantastic. It's not cheap, I have to admit that one, but it's not as expensive as some other mics. I see people talking about wanting Shure microphones like the SMB7 and there's a few others. They start from about £130 all the way up to £350. It's insane. This thing, currently on Amazon, it's £76. I picked it up on a lightning deal. I managed to get it for about £47. It is the best money I've ever spent on the podcast because this really does take my sound quality to the next level. And I very rarely have to do any kind of tweaking to the sound of this at all. That is just how good it is. Now, a late addition to my microphone setup, after having the Samson for quite some time, I wanted to try different things, and I was recommended something from a fellow YouTuber who told me this is something I should try, this monstrosity of a microphone. This is a shotgun microphone, generally used for situations like filming, where you want to pick up sound in a very focused forward area. It wants to be pointed where the sound is coming from. So to use this as a microphone for recording, it does need to be pointed directly at your mouth. It means it doesn't pick up off-axis audio very easily. So if I were to talk into this and then turn it away, I would suddenly become very quiet because it only wants to listen within a certain cone coming out of the very front there. It also comes with this fantastically enormous, comical looking muff here, but it works, and it works incredibly well. This was £10 when I purchased it. It is now currently, at the time of filming, £5 on Amazon. It is insane. It takes a AA battery inside to provide power, so it doesn't take in power from outside. It comes with a couple of different types of mount to go on to different mic stands. It comes with a cable with a jack plug on the end of it to plug into your computer. You can adapt that so that you could plug it into your phone as well. So just to give you an idea of the differences with all these mics, I am going to give you a short section of snippets of clips of me talking through the different mics to let you hear what they sound like as standard and what they sound like once I've tweaked them a little bit. So finally, my last upgrade of choice, and this one was the most expensive, but also the most flexible, was this. This is a Zoom Podtrak P4. This is a portable podcast recorder. This is great because I can plug 4 XLR microphones into this device. It is battery powered, so I can put AA batteries in the back, or I have a USB socket where I can plug in a power bank. And I can take this thing with me. I have 4 individual headphone sockets, so I can hear myself and everyone else who's talking. We all have individual mute controls. We have controls depending on the type of microphone you're plugging in, whether it is a dynamic mic like this or a condenser that requires power like some others. I also have the option to connect it to a mobile phone so that I can have a remote guest calling in, and they will hear us and we will hear them, but they won't hear themselves. It's a very, very clever thing called mix minus. And I also have the option to plug this into my computer, and that's where it becomes an audio interface. That means that I can use this microphone with the XLR connectors going into the computer through a USB. It's a very, very clever thing. It has a memory card slot in the side so that you can record directly onto this. You can also be recording to your computer at the same time if that's the way you want to do it. This allows me basically to have a backup recording of the podcast if I so need it. So I will be talking to Paul online. We will be recording ourselves, but if any of that fails, because we're talking over the computer through the internet, that sound is coming through here as a separate channel. There will be my own microphone going in, and there will be Paul's audio going into this, and all of those will get their own individual tracks, which means I will get something on the memory card, a saved file there, which has my recording and the recording of Paul's audio over the internet. It's a very, very clever piece of kit. Like I said, this is the most expensive thing I purchased. It was £160. It's not the worst money in the world. There are so much more expensive products, but the flexibility to allow me to plug it into the computer here or take it on the road with me and record wherever I want to go, I have that option. And that is so far the most flexible upgrade I have managed with this podcast so far. Right, so please excuse how awful this looks and sounds, but I'm using my webcam here to show you what's going on and let you hear some of the differences with some of the microphones and the sound qualities. What you're listening to right now is the microphones built into the webcam right now, just for clarity's sake. This is a Creative Livecam V2. These are the microphones built in. This is the kind of thing you would expect to hear. Now, there are ways that you can improve the sound quality. If I can go into the settings here of my streaming software, this allows me to add filters and activate them for different things. So first of all, I would activate a limiter. That stops the audio from going too loud on the microphone. The next one would be a noise gate. This one means that once it goes below a certain volume, then the microphone essentially becomes muted. I'll let you see what that does. If I switch it on now, it goes very quiet and it reacts almost instantly to me speaking, but when I stop speaking, it's about 60 milliseconds after I stop speaking, the audio goes quiet. So that helps to cover some of the background noises, but it doesn't make the sound quality that much better. Another option here is to use what they call a noise suppressor. And the suppressor does exactly that. It listens to all the other noise around you, and there'll be a drastic difference here when I switch this on now. Now it's not a limiter, it's not a noise gate, it's not cutting in and out, but it is taking a bunch of that noisy hissiness going on around, and it kind of kills it down a bit. It's not perfect. You'll hear this better if you're using good in-ear headphones. You'll hear a real difference. But this is built in. You're still going to hear all the echo going around, and that's not ideal for when you're recording a podcast. So let's look at different microphone options. So I'm going to switch over now to this cheap little microphone, which was the first one I used for recording on the podcast. If I switch over to this one now, and I've killed off the microphone in the webcam, this is the standard sound quality you're going to get from this little microphone. The nice thing is you can hold it close and get really good sound there, but you can also come away from it. So this is what you're going to get out of the box without using any filters. Again, I can add and use most of these filters. If you're not happy with the volume, you can add a gain, which if I do that, I'm a little louder, but also that hiss going on around becomes a little bit louder too, so that might not be what you're looking for. Instead, if I use the noise suppressor, this is the sound quality. So I do still sound slightly digitized. There's a little bit of artifacting going on there, but the sound quality is way better than on the webcam microphone, so you're going to get much better sound quality there. If you're using this for a podcast, this is relatively good, but these are live effects applied within this recorder. These are the kind of things you can do within Audacity and Reaper to try and get the best sound quality possible. So there are ways that you can improve it. So that is this cheap little microphone here. And I say it's not bad at all. Let's move over to the Amazon Basics USB mic. I'll just go and switch over audio options now. So I've muted that. And here is the Amazon Basics. This is the desktop mini condenser microphone. And the sound quality is totally different. I haven't got any, hang on. You can tell there's noise there. If you're going to have it on a mount or something, be very careful about that. All that will transfer through it. But if it's on an arm like my other microphones, then it's pretty good. So you can see here, the sound quality is really good. There's not much in the way of hiss or background noise, but it is a condenser, so it will pick up a bit of the echo, but overall it's really good. And I don't have to activate any kind of filters at all. In fact, I've got none activated on this at all. No noise suppression, no limiters, no gain, nothing. Sounds really good. The drawback is those plosives. You can see what I'm doing here is holding it 45 degrees away from my mouth, and that means I'm not plosive. There's no plosive going directly onto the capsule. One of the phrases that Bandra uses on the podcast's channel is "please bring pizza pronto," full of plosives. If I do that directly into this mic, "please bring pizza pronto," you hear all those pops. So there's one way of doing it is to make sure that you're not talking directly into the capsule, but to have it pointing at your mouth with the air going past it, then it's not going to be quite so bad. I say the other alternative would be to grab a pop filter and put that directly in front, and you'll get that ability to have it pointing straight at your mouth without having those plosives. You see, it's very sensitive, but the sound quality is good. So you can change this, you can set the level of its recording to tweak to how you want it. It's a really, really good mic. Let's move over now. Let me pop these legs open again so I can put it down. And I've got to swap over microphones plugged into the computer so that I can get the shotgun microphone running here. Let me just plug that in. Okay, and let's switch over. Started talking there and realized I hadn't actually switched on the microphone. So that microphone it's powered. It has its own AA battery in there that I've put in. So this is the sound quality from that, and if I get close, it sounds quite good. It's not too hissy, but there is a bit of hiss there. But this is very, very directional. So if I make sure this is pointed directly at my mouth, then it means I don't have to have it quite so close. You can still relatively hear me quite well, at least. The difference is when I add the filters to this, we'll see some differences. So I've got none activated at the moment, so I'm going to add some gain because it's not super loud. So there's the gain, and that brings up the level, but it also adds a bit of hiss. But again, we can remove that with a noise suppressor, and that's what it sounds like when you have suppressed the noise. And I've got this shotgun mic. It's further away from me, but the off axis, that's what I was talking about before, where if you're not directly in front of this area, you won't hear so well. So if I go I went 90 degrees around the microphone, and there was a big difference between here and over here. So it really is very, very directional. It wants to work this way. For currently a £5 microphone, it's actually good if you're willing to put in the time to make sure you can extract the best quality from it through your editing. So let's go over to the last microphone, which is the Samson. There's a big difference here. I need to move this one out of the way to get that one in place. So this is the Samson Q2U in the XLR mode through my Zoom Podtrak as my interface, and the sound quality here is awesome. It really is awesome. Yeah, there's no other way to describe it. So you do have to be quite close to it. As I mentioned before, it is a thing. You have to be here because as you move further away, it wants to listen less and less. So it's not quite like a shotgun microphone, but you can tell, please bring pizza pronto. It's really good at soaking up those plosives. And that's before you add this wind mic on top, but with a wind muff. Once this is on as well, I never really feel the need to have a separate pop filter, really makes a big difference. Now I could go into this and I could set up some filters. I could put a noise gate and a limiter on it, but I genuinely don't feel the need to. But if you listen in the background, there may be the smallest amount of hiss. I can change that on my interface. I can turn the sensitivity down, which also changes the sensitivity, so there's less and less hiss. And all I need to do is just get a little bit closer to the microphone, and now we've got negligible background noise at all, and still really good voice volume for me. So these are some of the differences, going from a £5 microphone a £25 stick mic, a £25 USB microphone, and an £80 nearly combination USB and XLR dynamic microphone. It lets you hear all the differences. The reason I've gone for the dynamic is simply because it only wants to listen here, and the further away I go, it really doesn't. And that's going to be what you're looking for in a podcast, especially if you don't have a dedicated studio where it's full of sound deadening and noise reducing situations. This gives you some of the ideas of some of the performance that you can get. Like I said, some of them will require a bit of effort for you to extract the best performance from them. Now, if you're like me and you have to record remotely, if you can't get together with a co-host or guests in person, then there are many different situations, different softwares, different online services that allow you to chat over the internet and record. Now, there are so many of them. We settled with one which is called CleanFeed. We're not being paid for it, we're not sponsored by it. It's simply what we use. It's completely free if you just want to talk with each other and you only want 2 channels of audio. That means for myself and Paul getting together, it would cost us nothing to get a recording at the end of it where we're speaking to each other with very little latency, and I'll get a recording where I'm on one track and Paul is on the other, and that's it. That's a good backup to have there. The drawback is if you want to have more guests and you still use the free service, then all of the guests, not the host, but all of the guests will be squashed into a single track when it gets sent over. That means if 2 guests are talking over each other, you have no way of being able to separate that out, pull them apart, mute, anything like that. They're all going to be on one track. That's where you would have to pay for it to be able to have individual tracks for your guests, for multiple guests. But a single guest and a single host is completely free, and it works really well for us. We've had very little difficulties. That is how we chat, and we get that backup of an online recording before we also have the recording going directly to our PCs. So that's another thing to look at, but you have to go and check it out and figure out what's good for you. There are so many others. CleanFeed is just one of them. I urge you to go and check them out, read reviews, even try them, see what's going on, explore different podcasting communities and see what other people are saying about them. So far, CleanFeed is the one for us. And if you want to take your editing game a little bit up market, if you want to use something which is a little bit better designed and perhaps flows a little bit better, in my opinion, then you can pay for a better audio editing piece of software, often known as a DAW, a digital audio workshop. And these products are fantastic. Audacity is great for being free, but I upgraded to a program called Reaper. And Reaper is so far my current favorite podcast editing software. I can really quickly edit through a podcast with that software. I have individual control over tracks. I can tweak the sound quality and I can get through it pretty quickly. It's actually more intuitive to use than the Audacity software is. I have to pay for it. It's not particularly expensive. I believe it's $60. Sometimes there are opportunities to get it for a little bit less, but $60, it's not a huge expense. And if you are looking to streamline your workflow a little bit more and you want to get through your edit just a wee bit quicker, I think it's worthwhile checking out. So there you have it. That is how I set up our podcast for relatively little money and all the upgrades that we've gone through to get it where we are right now. And so far, we are pretty happy with it. But that doesn't mean that we're never going to upgrade in the future. There's always going to be something that we're going to find that we want to improve on. And we really do ask the community for feedback on that as well. If there's anything that you guys have any questions about regarding this, please do get in touch in the comments down below or on my Instagram, where you'll find me. I'll have all the links down in the description there. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll catch you guys in the next video.